everyone had a little piece in building that thing, whether it was a Brian Noble or a Sean Patterson or Don Mikowski or Bryce Pop. They all kind of built the stepping stone to get to where we were. And I thought a lot about those guys, not just the guys on the field who obviously won the game, but there was just a lot that had to happen in those 5 years to achieve what we achieved.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Green Bay Narrative, a show where it is my job each and every week to sit down with a different fan to hear their stories. As always, I'm your host, Ben. On today's episode, I am joined by not a fan, but rather a former player. My guest today really needs no introduction, however, I'm going to give one anyway. He is a Super Bowl XXXI champion, Packers Hall of Famer. Today's guest is none other than former Packers kicker Chris Jacke. During my conversation with Chris, we talk about a wide variety of topics, including meeting Brett Favre for the first time, what it was like to get drafted, his first thoughts on Green Bay, getting inducted into the Packers Hall of Fame, Super Bowl XXXI. I mean, honestly, that's the tip of the iceberg. We talk about so many different things in this conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I did. Without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Chris. Enjoy. I am very excited to announce my next guest, former Green Bay Packer, Super Bowl champion, and Packers Hall of Famer Chris Jacke. Chris, thank you so much, man, for taking the time to join today.
Well, the honor is all mine. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks. I know our schedules have been kind of crazy, and we're finally doing this, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you, a little football, maybe past and present.
There you go. I'm looking forward to it as well. Glad our schedules kind of aligned now here. I know you're very busy with, obviously you said you had some family coming to town, but also running your own business here. So my first question for you is kind of talking about player alumni resources. Where did this concept come from? Where did you get this idea for it? How did it all kind of take place?
Well, it came to me when I went into the Packer Hall of Fame back in 2013. I think it just comes with going into the Hall of Fame. You start getting asked to doing a lot of different things in the community or in Wisconsin for that matter. Whether it's, hey, come to our golf outing, come to speak at our corporate luncheon or dinner or, what have you, or come to our fundraiser. We'd love to have you, sign autographs and do this and that. And people are willing to pay. It's almost kind of a rebirth for myself.
Sure.
There's a time there. Alumni kind of fall off the map or the radar, so to speak. And, I was doing those things, the year I went into the Hall of Fame, and I got to run into a lot of guys that I played with, some that I hadn't played with, like a William Henderson or Jerry Kramer, Gilbert Brown, Leroy Butler, a lot of those guys. And those guys have been doing that for years. And I was kind of picking their brains a little bit, and they really didn't have an answer. And the question was, how do you get your name out there? How do people know you're around or still alive and can do the golf outings or speaking engagements or fundraisers or what have you? And they really didn't have an answer. It was more who they knew, word of mouth, friends they had, or just people that they've been involved with for years coming back to Wisconsin, those guys. So I work with my wife a little bit. She's a executive coach, organizational development person, and I was talking about this, and she kind of guided me in the direction, why don't you start a website for yourself, meaning just a Chris Jacke website, and put out there, hire Chris Jacke to come to your golf outing, hire Chris Jacke to come speak at your, corporate or company, luncheon or dinner or what have you. I think that's a great idea. And at this time, I was still doing financial planning. Mm-hmm. I got all my degrees in college and went through all that, got all my licensing done while I was still playing. So I was playing with that a little bit once I retired in 2000. It really wasn't a lot of fun. If you think about the early 2000s, if you have any money in the market or owned a house, there was a lot of things going on in the world for those 10 years that really wasn't good for someone just starting out in the financial business. So this Player Alumni Resources kind of just fell into my lap. So what I did is, in talking with those guys, the Leroy Butlers or Jerry Kramers or Marv Flemings or Lynn Dickey, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a website for myself, and I'm going to call it Player Alumni Resources. We tried Packer, but my attorney kind of steered me clear of that. He said, you might run into a little head-to-head combat over there from 1265. So I said, fine, let's just call it Player Alumni Resources. But in talking to those guys, I went back to them. I go, hey, I'm going to start a website, and the purpose of the website is to kind of let the public know that we're still alive. We'll come to fishing event, or I'll get to fishing in a second. We'll come to golf events. We'll come to charity fundraisers, golf outings, what have you. And I kind of let the cat out of the bag. Fishing is also on the website as well, because when I was putting all these ideas together for what I wanted to do with the website, I think, what does Wisconsin love? Well, they love the Packers. Okay, I got that. I've got, when I first started, I started out with 10 alumni, so okay, great, I got that. Wisconsin people, they love golfing. Okay, and there's a few of us that can golf, and we can come to charities. And a lot of these guys do charity golf outings even before Player Alumni Resources came into existence. Then corporate speaking, some guys were doing that. I really wasn't involved with a lot of corporate speaking until I went into the Hall of Fame. But I said, those three things sound great. And then I said, what else does Wisconsin love? I go, they love hunting. And I thought to myself, well, I've never shot a gun in my life, so that could be an issue. and I go, well, how about fishing? I go, Wisconsin people love fishing. So those are the kind of four mainstays on the website that are there. It's golfing, speaking, fundraisers or appearances, general appearances where you come in and have someone come in and sign autographs for a couple hours and, work that out. And then I threw fishing on there just to have something else on there. So that's kind of how it started. So then over the last several years, I think we've got 50 or so alumni, the majority of which I played with. We do have a few younger guys. When I say younger, they're in their 40s, like an Amon Green or a Kabir or Len Dickey and a lot of those guys. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's right on the homepage of my website. The purpose of the website is to keep the fans connected with the guys that got us here, the alumni. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of background on Player Alumni Resources. It essentially started for a website for Chris Jacke, and it kind of mushroomed into an alumni website.
That's very awesome. I mean, what a perfect way to network too, with those you played with or those before you or those after you, to kind of come together and be there for one another for any events you have. Out of all the events you do, what would you say is your favorite to partake in?
Oh man, I love golfing.
Really?
But I did not golf this summer. I actually had shoulder surgery back in May, or was it April? It was April, I believe. So I had to take the whole summer off, and I'm actually getting my other arm done here in 3 weeks.
Oh, man.
So I usually golf probably 10, 15, 20 golf outings every summer. I golf zilch this year because of my shoulder problems. That doesn't mean I didn't get a few other guys some outings as well, but I'm looking forward to swinging a club in spring.
And I know you still live in the area. And maybe you don't want to give away your golf course of choice, but what courses do you really like in the area?
Well, I'll give you the de facto answer is I love all Wisconsin courses. And I think that comes from that they only get played on 4, 5, 6 months a year. But, locally here, obviously, I love Thornberry Creek. Royal St. Patrick's down in Wrightstown. I love it. Those two, I think, are my two favorites. Obviously, I golf other courses. Obviously, Kohler's nice, but I don't like paying $200 a round just to play on fancy grass.
Right.
So I try and keep it local.
Now, does your background in kicking help your golf game? Because I've kind of heard the two go correlated with one another. You hear Crosby talking about golf swings, how it's a momentum and not trying to kill the ball. Kind of the same way with golf.
Mason may use the word momentum. I always use the term kind of rhythm. Mm-hmm. Where if you've ever played golf, and I'm by no means a good golfer. I've played with Mason, and he kicks my every time we play. But I always say it's a rhythm like golf. Whether it's a 100-yard shot or you're hitting a tee off the tee box, you want the same rhythm. You want the same stroke. That's the same thing when kicking a football. Whether it's an extra point or a 54-yarder to win the game, you want your same rhythm. You want your same stroke. You don't try like a 54-yarder. You don't want to necessarily try and kick the ball harder, because then you're going to end up hooking the ball or putting the ball and doing things that your body isn't normally used to doing. So I always tried to train from a kicking standpoint, train my body to approach every kick the same, whether it was 50 yards or an extra point.
Interesting. If someone wants to reach out to you about, getting in touch with you for player alumni resources or an event, what's the best way to find you?
The easiest way, I'm all over social media, for good or bad. I have a lot of, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, but you can go right to the website and you can take a look at, the alumni that we do have on there, and, kind of get a history of, how it started and what we're all about. And that's at www.playeralumniresources.com. And a lot of people think it's Packer alumni, but it's playeralumniresources.com.
Gotcha. I'll put that in the website notes as well, so I'll link to it there. Well, to kind of transition things a little bit here, I'm going to start out with a nice question here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Brett Favre's ability to hold a football? And I should say for an extra point.
Is there anything lower than a 1?
That is anytime I think of, anytime I think of Brett Favre and you in the same light, it's always that picture of the finger off the ball and you're not even to the football yet.
No, it's in fact I still have that picture up on my Facebook page. Yeah, he would not trust me that I wasn't not going to kick his finger. And and he wasn't a good holder, and he had no ambition to improve himself. He was not good, and thank God he could throw a ball. But yeah, he was a heart attack. He was scared to death that I was going to kick his fingers, and I would, every time I go out there, the few games that he was holding, I go, Brett, I'm not going to kick you, just hold the ball. He goes, I got you, Chris. every time he would just let go of the ball.
And especially for that kick, because that was the kick to win the game against the Bengals to bring you up a point. That's a pretty big kick with the momentum that's going on in the atmosphere there. I've always wondered on those big kicks, and maybe that one's not as big as some of your other kicks that you've obviously made, 54 yards against San Francisco. But with those kicks, is there a different thought in your mind, or is there a different approach to it, or a different level of nerves that go into it?
Let's go back to the golfing analogy. Always got to, treat every kick the same. But, as far as nerves, a lot of people ask, do you get nervous, or if the coach calls timeout before you kick a ball, does it make a difference? And, things just happen so fast on the field. I know watching it on TV, it doesn't look quite as fast, but when you're in the game, the play clock is 30 seconds, 35 seconds, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if we run a third down play, don't make it, the whistle starts immediately, and thus the play clock starts immediately. So now the head coach has got to decide, do I punt, do I go for it, or do I kick a field goal? So that takes a few seconds, and then he's got to nod at the special teams coach, who nods at me to go out there and kick. And then we have a lot of exchange of players that go out there, because, there are certain players that are on the field goal team. And by then, for some reason, every time I would kick a field goal, or more often than not, I would look up and there was always 13 seconds left. I don't know if I'm remembering it right, but I always remember there being 13 seconds left. And just things happen so quick, you really don't have time to get nervous for those kicks.
Sure.
And and if the coach, a lot of people say, well, what if the opposing team calls a timeout? Most kickers, if you've noticed, we rarely miss after a timeout is called. It actually lets us compose ourselves and allows us to make sure we have 11 guys on the field. It lets us check the spot where the ball is going to be placed. One more check, if there's weather or wind, we can check those things. So head coaches haven't figured out that timeouts actually help kickers, and I've never understood why they do it. And I've never seen it. in recent memory, I can't remember a kicker ever missing after a timeout.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective on that. Because actually that was in my notes too. Is icing the kicker a valid thing? So you crushed that that myth right off the bat. I've always had such a massive amount of respect for kickers. They get so much flack in the NFL that they're not part of the team or whatever. But to me, I mean, if you think about it, a kicker isn't like a quarterback. A kicker doesn't have another couple downs to redeem themselves. They get one try. A lot of times it's to win a game, or it's very crucial points for the game.
Right.
Where if you have a great kicker, it changes the whole outcome of your team. I mean, look at what Sebastian Janikowski, for all of those years where he could just boot it 70 yards, or he had the leg for it anyways. I mean, that's a game changer. So I've always been interested and fascinated with kickers for that reason. And when I was kind of doing some research on you, I noticed that you were drafted in 1989, where a lot of kickers, at least nowadays, it seems like a lot of kickers don't get drafted, or maybe the trend's been lately where they have been. But what was that moment like on draft day back in 1989, where your phone actually rings and you're hearing this call?
I had no idea I was going to get drafted by the Green Bay Packers. I met with 3 teams. I worked out for 2 of them and only had lunch with the Green Bay Packers. Their special teams coach at the time was Howard Tippett, and he just came in. He said, "Hey, let's just go grab a coffee or a Coke," and we went to McDonald's and we had a coffee and we talked for a little while, and it lasted about an hour. And I said, "Well, that was fun. I'll never see him again." And I had actually worked out for the Denver Broncos, and I think it was the LA Raiders at the time. They might have been there, or LA Rams, one of those. They keep moving around. I can't keep up. So I was assuming I was going to one of those places. They actually put me through a workout. My agent was saying, I'm talking to people at Denver and LA. They're definitely going to take you probably in the middle rounds, which would be the 4th, 5th, 6th round. And those rounds went by the first, and this was before cell phones. So I'm sitting in my little, dormitory room by an old rotary phone, not even push button yet, waiting for a call. And I got a call, from Howard Tippett and said, "Hey, we just drafted you in the 6th round. Lindy Infante wants to speak with you." And my jaw kind of dropped. I was shocked, but I was excited at the same time, because it's, hey, this is the NFL. It's what every kid that, I don't care what sports you're playing, if you can make it to that level, you don't care who drafts you or who takes you. You just want the opportunity to go out there and compete. And I was real excited. It wasn't where I thought I was going, but I was happy to be where I was going.
So at what point in your college career, or maybe even earlier, did you think, okay, I'm talented enough and I have the leg where I could do this at a pro level?
Oh man, probably not to my senior year. I had a weird college career. I played one game my freshman year because the kicker got hurt. And then I didn't even play my second year. It was real weird at UTEP. This was before Bob Stoll came in and brought in the coaching staff and changed everything around. And because we had a really good kicker there. We were only a year apart. So my 3rd year, we actually shared duties. We would switch every other kick. So I would kick a field goal, and then it was his turn to kick a field goal. And then they came to me after my 3rd year and said, "Hey, we want to redshirt you." Because the other kicker, he would have his senior year all to himself. And I said, "Fine, that's great." So I had an unusual college career. So then I went into my senior year, and all of a sudden, I had, I think, 60 extra points, 60 for 60 in extra points. And I think I was 25 for 27 in field goals. So it wasn't until that season progressed that I thought, hey, maybe people are going to start looking at me, because I was starting to be mentioned for All-American honors and All-Conference and all this stuff. And so it really wasn't probably till late in my senior year that I thought maybe, hey, at least I would be looked at and have the opportunity to try.
Very cool. And you're in Texas, in your dorm room, like you said, you get drafted by the Packers. You go from a warm climate like Texas to find out you get drafted in Wisconsin. What's running through your mind at that point?
I didn't even think about the weather when I was drafted. I really didn't think about the weather until our first mini camp, which was, I want to say in May. It was right after the draft. And I being from Texas, and I was in El Paso in college, and, it's already 90 degrees in May down there. So I went to my first mini camp. I'm in shorts, and if you remember shorts in the 90s for guys, they weren't champs. They were actual shorts. So I get off the plane, first thing, we're coming in on this little puddle jumper that I'd never been in before. And I go, as we're going in towards the airport, all I see is cornfields. I go, oh my God, I hope there's an airport down there somewhere. And then we finally land. We get off, and I kid you not, I almost said the other word. It was slurring. And here I am, I think I had yellow shorts on and a white T-shirt, and my little bag with my kicking shoes and other stuff. And so that was my first experience. I'm going, Green Bay, Wisconsin. They go, I'm going to be I'm with you. It was bad getting off that first flight. Let's just put it that way.
And in that weather, obviously it changes your dynamic on your kicks because you got to worry about your traction a little bit more. At the end of the day, do you feel like it makes a huge difference whether it's snowing or not, just by the way they keep the field or they keep the equipment on the sidelines warm for you?
Yeah, things have changed so much technology-wise from even when I played. Just the field today, they've got that new heating system. The heating system for the field that we had back when I played, it was an electrical grid. And they couldn't even use it because they didn't know where the prongs were. The metal prongs were sticking up. They were afraid someone with a studded shoe would step on one and electrocute themselves. I kid you not. It was crazy. So that field froze quite often. Today they got it's heated by flowing hot water, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's like thousands of miles of this PVC pipe. And then they got fake grass growing with real grass. We didn't have any fake grass growing at Lambeau back when I played. So the playing conditions are a little different. You still got to deal with the cold, and there's no substituting warmth for cold. Mm-hmm. But the field is much more playable these days because of the technology. But cold and wind and rain and snow, there's just no getting around that stuff.
That's crazy. Crazy the changes from, because realistically, it's not like you played that long ago. You didn't play right in Lombardi's era or anything like that. So the fact that they've made so many adjustments in such a short period of time to how everything is done in the NFL is just mind-blowing to me.
It really is. Well, here's one for you. My rookie salary, since they're changing everything, was $60,000 as a rookie back in 1989. What's a rookie salary in 2018?
I don't know the exact number, and I know it goes by which round you guess, but it's a hell of a lot more than $60,000.
Yeah, it's like $300,000. But I've had conversations with the guys that played in the '60s, and they were making $5,000 or $10,000 a year. So I guess it's all relative. In 15 years, the place kicker for the Packers, and Mason's probably going to be going up to him and going, I wish I was making what you're making. And I go to Mason, I wish I was making what he was making. And Marco always says to me, I wish I made what you made. So it's all generational.
Yeah, that's funny. But kickers have probably one of the best gigs in the NFL in the sense of you can get a long-term career with, for the most part, you're not coming away with like CTE. You're not coming away with maybe some of the same injuries that linebackers are having or offensive linemen. You're pretty durable. You got Adam Vinatieri that's still doing it at a high level, even at 41. So they they make, a little bit less money, but they're having the longevity and they can still have a normal life for the most part afterwards. Yeah.
Adam Vinatieri, there's always these guys that play, I don't care if you're a kicker or a linebacker. If you can play, what is he, his 18th year or something?
I think he might even be longer than that.
It's nuts. And, his rookie season, I met him in Super Bowl 31 was his rookie season.
Wow.
That's perspective on, how things are. So, And he's still kicking at a high level. It's unbelievable. You mentioned Sebastian Janikowski. I think he's been in the league 15, 16, 17 years.
I think
sure
there's a couple
other guys around. So, yeah, if you take care of yourself, or maybe you just have a gift from God and you just have a body that can endure that stuff. My body kind of fell apart after 11 years. I had bad ankle. I've had a back surgery. Now I'm having, both my arms done. But like you said, no CTE as of yet.
For this week's Fun Packers Fact, I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about how progressive Vince Lombardi was when it came to discrimination on his team. So as we've talked about in previous Fun Facts, Vince Lombardi would not allow his team to eat at a restaurant or stay at a hotel unless every member of the team, regardless of their race, was allowed there. This stemmed from him being discriminated against as a young adult. Because he was a dark-skinned Italian American, people would make racist comments to him all the time. And that really molded him to later on in life when he finally became in a position of power and had some more say. So while reading When Pride Still Mattered by author David Moranis, I stumbled upon an excerpt where it was talking about how when he got to Washington, there was a player of his who was gay. And Vince wanted any player on his team who could provide value regardless of their race, sexual orientation, anything along those lines. So rather than cutting with him or struggling with having a homosexual player on the team, like I feel like a lot of teams nowadays would still struggle with, he instead told his assistants that if they hear one of them making a reference about the player's manlyhood, they would be out of there before their asses hit the ground. It really just shows how progressive Vince Lombardi was and his dedication to win, that he overlooked any discrimination that was prevalent then and focused on winning the football game and what could be done to win the game. Anyway, let's get back to our conversation with Chris. Hope you enjoyed this fun fact. I was just reading, was it Ron Wolf's book or was it Leroy Butler's book? And there is a figure or stat about you in there, or a fun fact about you in there as well. Prior to Ron Wolf getting there, you and Leroy Butler were the only two players that were there before Ron Wolf and there on the Super Bowl team.
Yep. When I do some corporate speaking, I have that little stat in there. So I always ask, because I talk a lot of the corporate speaking I do, we talk about transformation. What does it take to transform a not so good company or football team in this instance to a great one? Mm-hmm. And I talk about, the Packers, they turned over the coaching staff, the training staff, the weight room staff, the front office, they changed everything, the players on the field. And that's my question I always ask at the end. Does anyone know the two players that were held over from the Lindy Infante era? And other than me, obviously, they're clueless. And I go, it's Leroy Butler. And so it just tells you how much that team went through a transformation to achieve a Super Bowl 31 and everything it took on and off the field, behind the scenes with everything else.
Mm-hmm. What was that locker room feeling, or that locker room vibe, or even team vibe for that matter, like prior to Ron Wolf and Mike Holmgren to after?
You're almost asking me my presentation that I speak to. I talk a lot about my presentation, about when I came in as a rookie, that season, my rookie season, the cardiac pack, and, going 10-6, just missing the playoffs, and having great friends like Don Mikowski or Brian Noble or Don Bracken. And the guys got along great. We did a lot of things together. This is before, social media, so we could go out and actually have a beer or two and have a little fun here in town. And then the next two seasons, you go 4-12. And, I talk a lot about the culture that was in that locker room. It wasn't a good culture. I mean, they were literally halfway through the season when we knew our season was over. There were guys already thinking about where they were going to live in the off season, or, how many boxes am I going to have to buy to pack up all my stuff. So the culture wasn't that good in those 2 4-12 seasons. Thankfully, Bob Harlan recognized that and came in and really cleaned house and brought in, Ron Wolf initially. And then, from there, Ron hires Mike. And then from there, Mike brings in, Reggie White, Brett Favre, and all these guys. So it took years. It was systematic, everything they were doing. And it took, they came in 92. We won a Super Bowl in 96. So it took 5 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It took that long to really change that culture. And a lot of that's attributed to, what Reggie did. A lot of people always ask, was he as a greater person or football player as we saw on the field? And I always say, for everything Reggie did on the field, which was fantastic and unparalleled, but it was what he was doing behind the scenes. He was an active recruiter of guys to get them to come here. And it just, I can't even think of the guys off the top of my head. Some of the guys, Sean Jones, I know he talked to, and kind of making it cool again that you want to play in Green Bay. If you remember some of those old movies, probably from the 60s and 70s, football movies, a lot of coaches, I think it was Brian's song, he was yelling at his players, the Bears, and he says, if you guys don't get your stuff together, I'm going to ship you off to Green Bay. Players don't think that anymore. They want to Green Bay, and they still do. This has been going on 92, almost 23 years into the resurrection of the Green Bay Packers, and we've been quite fortunate with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and hopefully they'll find another one here soon. Because Aaron's not going to play forever.
No, unfortunately not. When Reggie White first signed, did you even think there's a snowball's chance in hell of that happening?
I being a kicker, and I'm going to use that as an excuse. I knew who Reggie was, but I didn't fully understand the impact he was going to bring to the team until I actually witnessed it firsthand. Obviously what he was capable of doing on the field, everybody knew. But again, it was watching him work closely with Mike and Mike Holmgren and the coaching staff or Ron Wolf, and they had a great communication on what they needed to do to turn this thing around. And it was talking to other players that were in free agency and, making Green Bay Green Bay an option as a place to come to. So it really wasn't until that I saw that internally, or Reggie getting in people's faces in the locker room. Knock that stuff off. We're a team. We're a family. We're going to help each other. We're going to make each other, practice harder in practice. Those types of things.
Interesting. And then obviously, like you alluded to, that they trade for this young quarterback from Atlanta. What was your first impression when Brett gets there? Did you think that there's any way in hell this guy was the heir apparent, or this guy was going to bring it back?
Not at all. I can still remember vividly the day I met him. I was actually in the weight room, and yes, kickers, we do work out in the weight room. But I want to say he was with one of the scouts, and they were kind of showing Brett the places, either right before, right after, or that he had signed, and they came up and introduced him. Hey, this is Brett Favre, the quarterback from Atlanta, and he's here for a visit. And I said, "Oh, that's nice." And again, I'm very good friends with Don McAllister. So it's like, here's another guy that they're going to bring in to back up Don. And so that's what was running through my head. And he had that deer in the headlight look. He was just a kid. He's 22, 23. I was 26, 27. So I by no means old, but I could tell the rawness and he was shy still, or at least he was in that atmosphere with the guys that were walking around with him. But I can still remember that very vividly, him coming through the weight room, and I'm going, that's just another guy.
And then obviously he, unfortunately Don gets hurt. Brett, I should say unfortunate for Don, right? Brett comes in,
right,
kind of sparks the Packers a little bit. By no means was he perfect, but then you have the defense to balance it. And then heading into the 96 season, he goes through rehab. Was there a different feel in the team that year, or was it, let's just get through Dallas, or let's kind of get over this hump and then we'll take it from there?
Well, I think the proverbial hump in the room were either the Cowboys or the 49ers. And I'm not going to point to that Monday night game that we beat the 49ers in overtime because we did it with a winning field goal. But to me, again, this is my personal opinion. Winning that game was more important than just putting a W in the W column. It kind of proved to ourselves, and it kind of proved to the rest of the NFL that, hey, the Green Bay Packers can beat one of those elite teams, the Cowboys or the 49ers, those teams that have, kind of dominated the NFC for years.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think we were, 7-1 going in that game or, whatever it was. And we really weren't getting that respect until we won that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the only one. It wasn't just because of a field goal. I mean, Don Beebe stepped up for an injured Robert Brooks. The defense held their offense, which was, playing very well under Steve Young. So there was a lot of things that clicked that night to win that game, not just a 54-yard field goal.
And at the time, it was a record, right? The longest kick in overtime to win the game.
Yeah, I think Sebastian Janikowski beat that. We've been talking a lot about him.
What a clutch kick. I know you were saying that it's, you don't really have the nerves. You just kind of run out there and do it. But, that's a long kick to make to, everyone's watching. Because was it a primetime game? I think it was a Sunday night or a Monday night game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a Monday night football game, yeah.
So
every now and then I see someone posted on social media and I'll watch it, and it's Al Michaels doing the play-by-play. So, it was a big game. It was billed as a big game because we were the up-and-coming team and the 49ers were the team to beat.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a huge game that, in all aspects.
And then obviously you beat them again in the divisional round of playoffs. You beat Carolina in the championship. How rockin' was Lambeau Field after winning the champion in the NFC championship to send the team to the Super Bowl in the first time in 29 years?
It was crazy. I don't know who was having more fun, us or the fans. A lot of us went inside to warm up. If you remember, that NFC Championship game was quite chilly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, in the mid-teens, and a lot of us ran in to warm up, and they came back out. But it was just fun. A lot of things went through my mind, and I'm sure if you ask Leroy, a lot of these same things went through his mind, thinking about the guys that it took to get us there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone had a little piece in building that thing, whether it was a Brian Noble or a Sean Patterson or Don Mikowski or, Bryce Topp. They all kind of built the stepping stone to get to where we were. And I thought a lot about those guys, not just the guys on the field who obviously won the game, but there was just a lot that had to happen in those 5 years to achieve what we achieved.
Absolutely. And then I'm sure the city had to be just a madhouse for the next 2 weeks leading up to that Super Bowl. The week before the week of the Super Bowl, you're obviously in New Orleans, but it had to just be probably the craziest time of your career to be a Packer for that week.
It was fun. Crazy is a good word too, though. We went down a week early. We went down that Sunday, so we had 7 days down there. And, those first 3 days, we didn't even have a curfew. Coach Holmgren said, guys, go have fun. Enjoy your moments, that type of stuff. But come Wednesday, we had curfews, and it became work again. But it was fun. First couple of days, we were out walking around, Bourbon Street, running into a lot of the Patriot players and, having a beer with those guys, or, seeing our coaches out doing the same thing we're doing, just having a beer and kind of taking in everything. And it really wasn't that crowded down there yet. It wasn't until Wednesday when everybody started coming in, all the Packer fans and all the Patriot fans, and you could actually walk around those first few days without, smelling everybody's, body odor. But it was a lot of fun. New Orleans was a great place to have it. Obviously, Brett Favre being from down in that part of the world, kind of added to it a little bit. But it was a lot of fun. It was, the game seemed to take forever from our standard point of view because you got the long halftime, you've got all the extra, activities that are going on around it. And, once that final whistle went off and you look up and, Green Bay Packers world champions, you kind of sit there and go, wow, did that just really happen? So it really, takes a while for it to sink in, and you go out afterwards, the night after the game, and there's parties back at your hotel, and they're bringing the Super Bowl trophy through. It was really a lot of fun.
Now, before the game, did I'm sure Reggie's made plenty of speeches throughout his entire career, but was there anything said prior to that game, considering what it meant to him to actually be to a Super Bowl? That's kind of what he was chasing for the fans and for himself.
Well, a lot of guys got up and spoke. I think Leroy spoke, and obviously I think Sean Jones and Reggie, but their messaging was all the same. Just go out there and do what you've done to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. Kind of going back to that golf swing analogy. Let's not overplay it, not overswing it. Just do what we've been doing all season, and we would win. And we there wasn't a thought in our minds that we would lose that game. We knew we were going to win. As long as everyone stayed healthy, and we played our game plan because we knew we had better players at the positions to win the game.
Mm-hmm. Is there a different level of nerves that go into kicking a field goal in a Super Bowl compared to other ones? I know you say it all happens so quick, but right. that 37-yarder you went out and kicked, or the 31-yarder, is there any other thoughts that are going out to your head, or is it, hey, I'm going to just try to keep this as routine as possible. This is a normal kick. I've been crushing 54-yarders in overtime. 37's nothing.
Right. Really, the only nerves, there were a lot of nerves before the game. Whether, I don't care if you were a rookie or if you were a 10 or 11-year veteran on that team, there were a lot of nerves. I mean, like you said, it's the Super Bowl. There's a lot of fanfare. A billion people are watching this around the world, and you've got all of Hollywood coming, and politicians. Everyone's watching this game. And that kind of sinks in after you go through your pregame and you're back in the room waiting to go back out. And there's a lot of time there. I think there was 45 minutes, from the time we left the field, and so there was a lot of time to think about just where we were at that point in life, and the nerves started kicking in. I know the bathroom was quite busy for a while there for a little bit before the game. But once we went back around the field and we got underway, it was just like any other game.
And then obviously the return to Titletown. What was that parade like? Bringing home a championship after 29 years of, you had the terrible 70s, 80s were up and down, and then finally you get over that hump and you bring home this championship, and you have these buses trying to pile through a city that doesn't have buildings tall enough to throw confetti from.
That's the truth, ain't it? It was amazing. I mean, think about Green Bay is only a town of 100,000, and I think they estimated the crowds to being close to 250,000, maybe, if memory serves, or it was a number that was larger than the population of Green Bay. I know that. Wow. And it's just for everything those fans, the organization went through some bad times, and so did the fans.
Mm-hmm.
But the fans never gave up. Those 4-12 seasons that we were talking about a little while ago, the stadium was always full. They were always there in training camp. The kids were there to ride the bikes, and they were always there on family nights to get your autographs and watch the practice. And so the fans never gave up. It was one of those, you had to step back and take a look, even if you were in a bus, and just go, you're really a part of something special. And that was one of the things that Mike Holmgren said when he first came here. If we win a championship, it'll be more special here than any place else in the NFL, just because of the history and the fans of the Green Bay Packers.
Mm-hmm. And then, there's got to be a nice appeal to it, knowing that you're going to be forever immortalized in a franchise that's now 100 seasons in, and you're going to always be known as a champion in such a historic franchise.
It is, and with, my creation or involvement with Player Alumni Resources, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of guys that I may not have had the opportunity to meet. Jerry Kramer, just being able to sit down with him, and he can talk about the 60s like he's watching it on TV, some of the stories. I mean, it's like he's still there. Marv Fleming, the Lynn Dickies, or the, Greg Cokes, or, Paul Coffins, and getting to know that generation of players, and, telling us what it was like to be when Lombardi coached, and, whoever, or Bart Starr, and meeting him and his wife, during my time here in Green Bay. It's quite a rich history when you really think about some of the names that you can talk or bring up when you talk Green Bay Packers.
During this break, I want to first off say thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I greatly appreciate it. Whether this is your first episode you've listened to or your 35th episode, if this is your first episode, please do not forget to head over to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast or follow us on SoundCloud, however you listen to it. Also, to any of you listening, if you'd be so kind as to share this podcast with one friend who is also a Packers fan. I know it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but if everyone who listens to it does it, and then everyone who listens to it after that does it, it helps grow the podcast in an organic nature, if you will. Thank you once again for all of the support. You guys are truly amazing. I can't thank you all enough. Let's get back to our episode with Chris. Now, after winning the Super Bowl, did they end up doing a ring ceremony for you guys?
Yeah, they did. They had a ring ceremony right here in a local country club here in Green Bay.
That's fantastic. That has to be cool just to open that box and see that piece of jewelry sticking out at you for what you accomplished and what you did for that franchise.
It was really cool. I had never seen, I've seen, obviously photos or pictures of Super Bowl rings, but when you look down at the one they're giving you and it's yours, it just brings chills over you just to look down and go, wow, this is mine. And then you slip it on your finger and you go, thank God it fits. And and I rarely wear it now. I'll wear it to, some of the functions that I do, but it's just really cool to have. I don't know. I'm trying to find words to describe it.
Right.
I hope every Packer or, player has the opportunity to at least try and get one. It's just something that you'll carry and cherish for the rest of your life.
Is that one of your favorite items you own from your playing time?
Let's see. My favorite is a picture of Brett Favre not holding the ball in a field goal. I do have that photo, and I haven't had it. I've run into Brett several times, and I want to have that picture with me so I can get him to autograph it. I got to have that. I have a lot of stuff from when I played. I have every team poster for those 8 years that I played in Green Bay autographs in my basement. I have some other things. I'm not a memorabilia collector, but I have enough stuff that it would look like I was. So I've collected things over the years, and again, meeting some of the older guys, I've gotten some things autographed by them, even some of the younger guys, like a Jordy Nelson, or one of my favorite things is I got a football signed by myself, Mason Crosby, Chester Marco, and Jan Stinnerud.
Wow.
And Ryan Longwell. And I forgot about Ryan Longwell. So I have 5 kickers for the last basically 50 years on a football.
That's awesome.
Which is kind of cool.
Any Super Bowl 31 stories that a lot of people don't know of, or any stories that maybe no one really knows of?
People may have heard this one. You talked earlier before the Super Bowl, did anyone get up and speak and kind of give us, the rah-rah speech? You may have heard this one, but the night before the game, we have team meetings, we have a little dinner, and then we have individual breakout meetings. But when we start those, Mike Holmgren always gets up and talks, a little bit of rah-rah. We'll watch a highlight film from the game before and do those types of things. But when we went in there the night before on that Saturday night, we all walked into this room, and there's a table, and there's a big old sheet covering something in the front of the room. Nobody's brave enough to go up and see what it is. So Mike Holmgren continued, he goes about his little speech, and, if you win this game, you're going to be immortalized. They're going to love you in Green Bay. You're going to be basically quote-unquote gods. I think he used that word. But he said the most important thing of all, and he takes back the sheet, and there's a stack of $60,000 sitting on that table. He goes, you win this game, you get a $60,000 check. Our eyes just kind of opened. I didn't go up and check and see if it was actually all money, but that pile of money looked really nice.
What a good way to visualize what you're going to be getting.
Yeah. I mean, but nobody would go up and take the sheet off or look under. We weren't brave enough. And, he says, gentlemen, we'll win the trophy. You'll get your rings. You'll be immortalized. And you'll also get a $60,000 check, which I don't know what they get today, but back then that was a pretty good check.
Yeah, I would still take a $60,000 check now. I wouldn't complain.
I would too.
During your time, I mean, you even live in Green Bay now, so you might even still bump into it. But during your endeavors there, what is the craziest, or who is the craziest fan you've ever encountered?
Oh man, everyone I meet, they're my biggest fan. That's what they say. I've met a lot of different people, all ages. I'm meeting kids now that show pictures of when they were babies, and I'd be holding them, 20 years ago as children.
That's funny.
Or an older lady will come up and say, I loved you back when I was, 40. And, now grandma's 80 or something. So that's hard to say. I mean, the fans here are so nice. When my wife and I would go out for dinner or if I'm grocery shopping, fans are always nice, and they'll just say, hey, it's good to see you, and that's how I want to fit in up here. I like to fit in as the guy that goes grocery shopping and mows his yard, and, if you want to chat a little football, if you want to complain about Mike McCarthy's game plan, we can do that too.
Yeah, I didn't know if there's any fans that you remember of, like, and obviously the fandom has changed a little bit after all the years of success. You get weirder and weirder people who start hanging around, but I didn't know if any of that existed back in the 90s, or if people actually respected your personal bubble back then.
Yeah. Fans, the Green Bay Packer fans, I think they're unique because I don't know if it's because it's a small community and they may be used to seeing us out and about, but they're really respectful. And they're really, you'll run into the, every now and then the idiot that's had too many beers at the bar and say, hey, you remember that kick you missed back in? And I typically say, no, I don't, because I don't remember any misses. But he'll go on and say, you cost me $10. And I apologize, and I buy the guy a beer, and then we're best friends. But for the most part, fans are great. I mean, they're very knowledgeable. They remember games, that I don't even remember. They'll talk about something I did or missed a field goal, made a field goal, and I'll just keep nodding my head. And for the life of me, I don't know what they're talking about.
Hey, that's all right though. I mean, at least your experiences have been good, and obviously good enough to keep you in the area, living here. And what made you stick in the area? Just having the ties now with your family and staying. Yeah, it was family ties. My first wife, when we divorced, my kids were at that age, and she was from Wisconsin, Green Bay, and so if I was to leave and go stay back to Dallas and live or something, I wasn't going to drag my kids for 6 months of the year or not see them at all. So I just put my roots down. My roots were already here, so it wasn't very difficult to do. Mm-hmm. I loved the community. I was already working and doing things here in the community, so it really wasn't a hard decision. And things have worked out. Met my second wife a few years ago, and I love living in Green Bay, and I still love running into people at Festival Foods and talking about football or that miss that I really didn't miss. Couple more questions here for you. I know I've taken up a lot of your time, so I appreciate it once again. But so you get this call to go into the Hall of Fame for the Packers. What is that moment like? Do you get a phone call? Is it do you understand that you're being nominated? What's the whole process like over there?
It's a phone call. You don't know anything until they call you. When they called me, I want to say it was December. I went in the summer of 2013. So they called me in December of 2012, and I can't remember the gentleman's name that called, and he said, "This is so and so from the Green Bay Packer Hall of Fame. I'm calling to let you know that we have inducted you into the Packer Hall of Fame for 2013." And and it came out of nowhere for me. It came out of left field. I mean, it wasn't on my radar at all. It took me a while to really fathom what the heck just happened. I said, thank you very much. And, we made a time that I was going to go in and talk to him and meet with him and, learn a little bit more. But it really took me a couple of days to understand. I had to Google, Packer Hall of Fame to see, who the heck was in it. Now I've been to a few of them because a lot of my teammates have gone in there, and I just never assumed that a kicker would go in, or me for that matter. So it was quite a shock, but at the same time, it was quite an honor. There's a lot of good names in that Hall of Fame.
It's very cool. And what was that ceremony moment like for you? I mean, a lot of former teammates, I assume, a lot of friends, family, all just surrounding you for your moment.
That was more nerve-wracking than any field goal I ever kicked in my entire life. Because here's the thing, I do it now and I still hate it, but I do it because I kind of enjoy it. It's public speaking. I hate public speaking. But my wife, who's a professional at it, she does it for a living. Every time she's heard me speak, she says, "You do a great job. Why are you so scared? Why don't you think you do it?" Whatever. But I was so nervous tonight. I mean, there were 1,200 people in there. I didn't even eat dinner. I was sitting there sweating bullets. And I kept thinking, I can't lose. I had my cheat sheet with bullet points that I wanted to cover. And, I guess my wife said, "Hey, you did a great job." And my folks were there. My family was there. So it was very nervous. I can't remember any field goal that I was that nervous over speaking in front of 1,200 people.
I don't blame you. That'd be absolutely terrifying. 1,200 people. It was a lot of people.
Now I do it. I mean, I still get nervous, but it's like, you just go out there like a field goal. You just go out there and do it, get off the field. Or go out there and speak and get off the stage. So,
just kind of end things off here. I always ask a couple more deep thought questions. So the first one I got here for you is, if you could relive any kick from your career, which would you choose?
Relive it? Improve it, or just relive it? Well, the Monday night game I'd love to relive. A lot of my rookie kicks, because it was just so much being a 22-year-old kicking in the NFL. And again, before social media, we had a lot of fun with those guys. They kind of, Matowski and Bracken and Noble, those guys kind of took me under their wing, for better or worse. Yeah. It was just, the Monday night game, there were so many kicks. God, I mean, let's go with that. Let's go with every kick in my rookie year and that Monday night game against the 49ers.
Great answer there. And my last question here, were you ever starstruck by a teammate during your time with the Packers, or an opponent, someone you met on the field?
Oh man, yeah, I'm trying to think of the people that I had the chance of. I got the opportunity to play against Joe Montana when he was still playing. Wow, Barry Sanders, I was still in awe of every time I watched him play. Yeah, I still haven't figured out why he retired so early. Obviously, the guys on our team, Reggie White. Wow, I mean, those names came to mind because they were, Steve Young, playing. And Steve Young, I remember that after that Monday night game, after I kicked that field goal, he actually came over and made a point of congratulating me, which I thought was, they go, "Hey, Steve Young just congratulated me on a kick." That's kind of cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guy, I always touch on that a little bit, when I do some speaking. It's, not only the guys I played with, but a lot of the guys I played against. Because kickers, let's face it, we're just glorified fans. We just get paid more, than a fan. So, we're not in that often. And a lot of times you get caught up in the game watching your own team, or watching, I loved watching Detroit, when we played Detroit, watching Barry Sanders run, although, I mean, he always killed us for whatever reason, unless we had him on a frozen field. But he was just fun to watch. I hate to say it, it was fun to watch the Cowboys because they were so good. And I remember it was one of the NFC Championship games or a playoff game. We were down in Dallas, and I was done with my pregame warm-up, and I was just kind of walking around, and I went over to our special teams coach, Nolan Cromwell, and I just said, "Nolan, are those guys just huge? I mean, they look so much bigger than we were." I mean, Michael Irvin was 6'4", 220, and we have Robert Brooks, who's maybe 6 feet, 190. I mean, they just look gigantic, and they always had that big offensive line. It's no wonder they were in the Super Bowl all the time. It was just, they looked huge. And so it was the opportunity to play with the guys I played with, and play against a lot of legends that I played with.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Chris, once again, man, thanks so much for taking the time on tonight to sit down, tell your story. I know People are going to really appreciate it. Once again, go check him out, Chris Jacke. And you're on Twitter now as well, right?
Yeah, I'm dangerously on Twitter.
So go check him out.
I'm on it, but I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm learning.
Okay. Well, focus on football on Facebook and LinkedIn right now.
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to do it all. I'm even on Instagram, believe it or not.
Really? I didn't know that. I'll have to follow you here afterwards.
Yeah. There you go.
So on every social media platform, go follow Chris, go interact with them, go rant about McCarthy with them. It'll be a great time.
Oh yeah, I mean, follow me on Facebook for sure because I have a lot of fun during the games. I kind of speak my mind during the game as it's played out. I usually have a lot of fun with the fans on there. So,
as always, to end the podcast, go Pack Go. And that is going to do it for episode number 35 of the Green Bay Narrative. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to the episode. I'd also like to say thank you to Chris for taking time out of his busy schedule to sit down and tell his stories. It was so good to hear them and capture them for the masses. I know a lot of people are always really curious to see the perspective of the player. Be sure to go follow Chris on any of his social medias if you don't already. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn just by searching Chris Jacke. Speaking of social media, follow me as well if you don't. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you can find me, The Green Bay Guy. I'm on Snapchat as well, The GB Guy, and now on YouTube, The Green Bay Guy. So head over there, follow me. Until next week, go Pack Go.